the data is there and it is real data. The problem is that it's just so pervasive in the products that are available to us. And that's why I feel so passionate about empowering and arming people with this information because you have the right to vote in your purchases. And by not purchasing these kinds of products and these ingredients and finding those alternatives, it changes what then becomes available on the shelf because then these other harmful ingredients no longer have the market share and the negative impact that's happening on our health. And it's going to take a minute for all of us to reset. Like when I talk
Mhm.
about rebuilding our skin barrier, and rebuilding our microbiome, it doesn't happen overnight.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Health Clash She Deserves, the show where we ditch outdated women's health myths and talk real bodies, real cycles, and real stories. I am your host, Autumn Payon, and today we are welcoming Jodi Scott to class. Jodi is the co founder and CEO of Green Goo, but her path to the world of botanical skincare began in a very different place. With a background in psychology, originally on a pre med track, Jodi spent her early career training resident physicians on the vital connection between the mind, the body, and medicine. While Jodi was working in private practice, her sister Jen was a midwife and herbalist, wildcrafting plants and hand pouring medicinal salves in her own kitchen. What started as a humble family passion, ingredients infused over full moon cycles and sold at local farmers markets, eventually evolved into full-fledged movement to change the way we look at skin health. Today, Jodi combines her clinical rigor with those deep family roots in herbalism to redefine skincare, moving us back toward the power of whole plant science. Jodi, welcome to class.
Great to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. We're going to have a really great conversation today all about skin health, endocrine disruptors, all of these different things. But I'd love to just start with, like I said, you had pre med aspirations and then you dove all in on this skincare brand with your sister and your mom, which is amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got there and what drives your passion?
Yeah, so like you said, I got my master's in health psychology, specialized in psychoneuroimmunology, and I was training resident physicians on the biopsychosocial model. And what does that mean? Truly, first and foremost, I wanted to really reinvent how we were approaching our healthcare model.
Mhm.
And rather than just simply prescribing, have the physician look at the patient as a whole and collect all of that information in a way that they may be able to provide more resources so that they could really move whatever the solution is that needed to happen or lifestyle change or what have you. And then I found it very interesting too, just the relationship, like you said, of your mind and your body and your health and how interwoven they are. And at that time, it was very much sort of like anecdotal. Like we saw that when people were stressed, that their immune systems were what appeared to be compromised, but we really didn't have a more integrative research model. And it was very much siloed. And so I started in that arena with this idea that there was more here than we knew. And my sister being an herbalist and a midwife, she really introduced me to just plants in itself. Like we were living a really clean life and we cared very much about clean ingredients, but plants more in the medicinal lane. Like I wanted to eat clean because I knew it was good, but I never thought about the fact that like what else these plants could do for you. And for us, like when we started Green Goo, I was pregnant at the time and I got a cut. And I went into my first aid cabinet, which was total chaos. It was like a ton of expired products. And I'm like, why do I have all this junk? And then I read the ingredients because I hadn't read it in a while. And I was like, ew, I don't want to put this on my body. And I certainly don't want to put this on my kid, which typically, like most of our first aid stuff, we're using on our kiddos. And I thought, am I the only one? Like, why do I think that this is the only way? And my sister, who's like a total purist, I was like, do you use these traditional first aid things? And she was like, yeah. And it was so eye opening for me that the natural consumer was willing to abandon their natural ethos because they were told that these one time use chemical products were the only solutions to get the job done. And we all have this idea that if it doesn't sting, burn, or dry it out, it must not be working, which is like so different than how our skin really responds. And then to add to it, that chronic skin conditions are at an all-time high. And the OTC space is really designed for acute skin conditions like a cut, a scrape, poison ivy, a cold sore, not for these chronic conditions that are happening. And like eczema, psoriasis, chronic pain, these are now becoming so pervasive. And of course, we'll talk more about them. And so here the general consumer is trying to find these solutions that use 7 to 10 days, or you need to, if symptoms persist, go see your physician, which they often do. And we thought, well, what if we can make solutions that are superior in efficacy and also plant-based? And so that was really sort of the foundation that led us to reinventing first aid with Green Goo.
And that's really incredible because what you're saying about the chronic skin conditions being on the rise versus just an acute something or other, like for myself at least, I guess I wouldn't think super hard about it if it was a one time thing and I was like, oh, whatever, it's probably fine. But for something more chronic that you're putting on your skin every single day, like when I put lotion on my skin every single day, I'm very careful about what's in that lotion because it's something daily. But let's, I guess, clarify first off for people listening who maybe are like, okay, yeah, like I eat healthy. I care about the ingredients I put in my food. Why should I care about the things going on my skin? Is it really that big of a deal?
Your skin is more than just the largest organ on your body, in your body. Like, it's so interesting how in A&P, it's like anatomy and physiology that we're like, okay, your skin, it's just this large organ. And now let's go talk about the other organs. Your skin is born from the same embryonic tissue that your nervous system is born from. It is rich in neurotransmitters and it's highly absorbent. And so everything that we put on our skin gets absorbed and then communicates to like our skin is then communicating to the rest of our body. So when we put things like you mentioned endocrine disruptors, so things like paraben, petroleum, phthalates, forever chemicals, that then stimulates in our nervous system, "Hey, I'm in a state of fight or flight." And then that's like, "Hey, endocrine system, by the way, we've already produced this hormone, so you don't need to produce that anymore." Or, "I've produced this hormone, because it came from that topical you put in. Now you need to produce more of another hormone." So it's like giving mixed messages to our endocrine system. And then what happens is like our nervous system is like, "Okay, we're in this state of fight or flight. Let's increase cortisol." And then your immune system's like, "Well, now I need to respond. So now I'm gonna present inflammation." And like, we have this idea that the term inflammation just means like achy muscles. Like, inflammation can show up in a lot of different ways. It can be, of course, chronic pain, but it can be the chronic skin conditions that we're seeing, the eczema, the psoriasis, the dry areas. It's also shows up as insomnia. It shows up as cloudy, foggy brain. So all of these things that we've kind of just accepted as like, "Oh, this is just a part of being human." It's not. These are side effects that are from compounded use of using these petroleum, paraben, forever chemicals, phthalates. And phthalates are the number one produced man-made chemical in the world. The US produces 8 billion pounds of them a year, and they're in our packaging, they're in the ingredients that we're putting on our body, they're in the containers we're putting our food in. They're the things that we're cooking with, and you do that every day, all day, that's your body being in a low state of fight or flight. And, so that's a good starting point.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And you bring up a lot of really important points there. And kind of one of the things that I'm thinking of, I am in the endometriosis space a lot, and it's chronic inflammatory, neuroinflammatory disease. And a lot of those symptoms, like you were saying, can be very common symptoms of that, just like chronic state of inflammation. And I've been doing a deep dive into how that affects our nervous system and that autonomic balance and the chronic fight or flight. And it's really interesting how much our products and the things that we're putting on our skin can be affecting that as well. Something that you said about how we just kind of accept these things as being part of being a human. nowadays. They've become so common and pervasive in our culture. We just accept them as part of being human. But I would go even further and say that a lot of people disproportionately think of it more as part of womanhood and how these symptoms are just part of being a woman, of going through cycles, of going through perimenopause. Like it's just all of this stuff that we just kind of are like, well, it's normal. And it's like, well, no, there's a lot of other things going on there that could perhaps be exacerbating these symptoms way past a normal point. So, can we talk a little bit how endocrine disruptors are affecting women and people in female bodies disproportionately?
Oh, yeah. And there's many ways these endocrine disruptors come into our system, right? They can come through the skin as these various man-made chemicals, and so they get absorbed, and then they miscommunicate to our endocrine system that then responds. And it can also be some of these endocrine disruptors, for example, like a petroleum base or a paraben base, are actually suffocating the microbiome that's on your skin, which is a living organism. And even like the alcohol in our lotions is compromising our microbiome. And we're talking more about microbiome. A lot of times we're typically talking about it internally instead of externally, but it's a living organism that lives on our skin that actually communicates to our endocrine system as well, which then puts all these things into fight or flight. So when you have this miscommunicating signal going to your endocrine system, all of a sudden you have a number of hormone disruptors happening. And this goes across the board. So your estrogen, your testosterone, your progesterone, all of those start in your sleep hormones and so on. They start to have miscommunications, misfiring. So then you have fertility challenges. You have more difficult time when you are menstruating or PMS, postpartum. And we talk a lot about fertility. Like when your body is in a state of fight or flight, it's not going to be in a state of let's procreate. It's going to be in a state of I need to make sure that I hunker down and I keep your body alive. And so this low grade inflammation, and I put quotations right around that, is showing up in our various systems. And so, like you said, with the endometriosis and having that inflammatory response is very much a part of that nervous system experience that is in response to these chemicals. And so it's so empowering when I tell people, like, if you just eliminate these ingredients in your life, and let's also back up, these ingredients have only been around for about 150 years. They are a product of the Industrial Revolution. Our bodies don't know how to respond to this. And we're still just getting to know how these ingredients are impacting our bodies. And they were designed because for the first time when we could mass produce consumer packaged goods to people, we could we didn't have the transportation or the technology that we have today to get products to people quickly. And so we also had this idea more value meant more volume, which is really where lotions were kind of born from. So you put water into this giant container, then you need alcohol and other kind of stabilizers so you don't get a moldy lotion in 3 years if it takes that long to get it to your doorstep. And and now today, like, it was, like, hypothetical 20 years ago, like, "Are these ingredients bad for us? Could they be a problem?" Like, the data is there, and it is
Mhm.
real data. The problem is that it's just so pervasive in the products that are available to us, and that's why I feel so passionate about empowering and arming people with this information because you have the right to vote in your purchases. And by not purchasing these kinds of products and these ingredients and finding those alternatives, it changes what then becomes available on the shelf because then these other harmful ingredients no longer have the market share and the negative impact that's happening on our health. And it's going to take a minute for all of us to reset. Like when I talk
Mhm.
about rebuilding our skin barrier, and rebuilding our microbiome, it doesn't happen overnight. So we also have this idea that we just want something to vanish. Like we want that quick, the same way we looked at OTC, right? Like I've got a cut or I've got poison ivy. I want this thing that's going to make it go away in 2 or 3 days. Well, there are times like with our skin, this eczema that's showing up, it might take a few weeks to rebuild that skin barrier and nourish it and not give up while you've also eliminated these other harmful ingredients that we've been doing for so long that our body has this like systemic reaction to.
Mhm. You bring up so many good points there, and just like I love what you're saying at the end, how we can vote with our dollars. Like, I think it's very important to vote in your elections, but that's once in a blue moon. You vote every single day with what you are purchasing as a consumer, and especially as women, we make up the majority of the consumer base. We're buying products for the household. Like, we're the ones making those decisions, and so there really is a lot of power in what we buy. So when it comes to that, I guess, what are the number one things if we're looking at an ingredient label? Because I'm not exaggerating when I say I've been in a Target aisle, like beauty aisle, almost on the verge of tears because I just want to find a lotion or deodorant or whatever, and everything that I'm like scanning on my Yuka app is coming up terrible. And if any, I can put the Yuka app in the show notes for you guys if you are curious about what that is. But I literally have been pushed to the verge of tears before because I'm like, I just need a new shampoo. Like, I don't know what to do here. What are the number one things we should be avoiding and what should we be looking for?
Well, one, I love that you're sharing that app. That is one of the best resources. My daughter and I use it all the time, and
Mm,
it really helps prevent from greenwashing because
mhm.
she'll show me the app and she's like, "Mom, I really thought that this product was going to have a good number because look at the packaging. It's got like all these flowers and these plants." And she's like,
Yep.
"It got a horrible score."
Yeah.
So, really, that's a great, great resource. Because when you flip over the label, it's so overwhelming, especially when you look at sometimes these things have 20, 30, 40 ingredients. And
Mhm.
one clue too is if it does have water in it, that's also a pretty quick clue that they put in a lot of stabilizers in there in terms of some of these other chemicals and alcohol agents. And that's super helpful. Now, mind you, there are definitely other emollients and surfactants that are going to have the petroleum base and the paraben base, and they're going to have a variety of different like medical names to or more medical names to them. Um, I will segue oxybenzone in your sunscreen. That's,
Mhm.
not typically in your generic products, but I do want to just call that out as a known carcinogen and finding alternatives to that. But I think being able to use an app like you suggested will prevent you from being confused with what is in the label because you can't really just a, a paraben or a phthalate can have 100 different derivatives of what it's made from. And they're coming up with more of them every day.
Mhm.
And I love when you see a plant, of course, as your first ingredient. I also would argue away from extracts and really finding whole plants. And I raise my hand on this one just to give a little bit of wisdom around a lot of times people think, okay, well, if I'm going to switch to natural, I'm making a compromise. It's not going to work as well. And what I would say is a lot of the natural that people have had available to them was also a product of the Industrial Revolution, meaning that they tried to take natural and fit it into the standard operating system that we have today for consumer packaged goods. So, a lot of the natural ingredients, the plants have been exposed to high heat. They have been exposed to chemicals or alcohol that has compromised the plant integrity and the plant medicinal properties. So, you're only getting a fraction of the plant. So, I'm taking it a step further since we're in class today and we're just going to go deeper.
Yeah.
Number 1, you want to first eliminate the bad ingredients. But number 2, it's also discerning how can you get more nutrients and good ingredients from what you're putting on your body and in your body. And that's the difference between some kind of extract that says, "Hey, I've got some calendula extract in here and lavender extract, and then I also have some other phthalates in here." And so you're like, "Oh, you're not really getting the good stuff." And so be thinking about that when you're discerning labels as well. Anything that's like whole plant, whole fruiting body, is going to give you more of that medicinal botanical profile that actually feeds you nutrition as well.
I love that perspective of adding as opposed to subtracting? Because, like, yeah, it's important, like you said, to remove certain ingredients, but I think that it's like a lot less overwhelming. And I see this a lot with diet too, when people are like, I want to change my diet. It's just really difficult. Instead of being like, well, I have to restrict myself. What can I take away? What can I add? What do I really need? What nutrients do I lack that I could be adding to my diet? And same thing like you're saying with your skin, what can I be adding to just kind of make that transition, make it a little less overwhelming and a little less like a complete overhaul that people feel like they have to do immediately. Um, and you talk a lot about the whole plant science. Can we dive into that a little bit more about what you mean by using the whole plant versus an extract and what the actual difference is when it comes to how your body's receiving it?
I always like to give the analogy, it's like vitamin C packets or actually having freshly squeezed orange juice. And so a lot of times these plants are when you expose the plant to high heat, it compromises the plant integrity. And you're getting isolates from the plant. And the way the plant works, it has this like entourage effect with all of these various botanical components that are why it's able to do what does to stimulate and emulate the body so that the body can do what it knows how to do. And so when you can get the value of that whole plant, and then, I mean, I'd even take it a little bit further and say, when you can get the value of the whole plant with other plants. So, for example, like in our first aid formula, calendula is this wonderful astringent. It's antifungal, anti-yeast, antimicrobial properties. And then, yarrow helps, bring blood flow to the wound, and plantain kinda takes the sting out. But when you put all 3 of them together, they complement each other. So all of a sudden, the calendula becomes more of like this repair, rejuvenating plant, and then the yarrow and the plantain are like a coagulant and an oxygen producer, and all of a sudden, your wound care, like, your wound health is sped up. And so having the plants in their full botanical medicinal form while also complemented with other plants, it just it raises its performance.
That's really amazing because bringing it back to what you said before about how people often assume that you're making some sort of sacrifice when you switch to a more natural. It's like, but if you're actually, because I also think, like you were saying with greenwashing, that plays in a lot there too. People think that they're using a more natural product. It was actually greenwashing. It barely worked. And they just kind of get a bad taste in their mouth for all like natural things going forward.
Well, no, and to your point, it gives me so much joy when I twofold. When I get a customer that's never used natural before and is like, I just don't believe in it. I had a mom the other day whose daughter has eczema, and she's like, we've been dealing with this for a year. We've done everything prescription and over the counter. We heard through the grapevine your
Mhm.
products would work. We do not believe in natural. She's like, I am coming to you with very low expectations. Why would yours work and none of the prescriptions work? And she's like, but we haven't slept in a year and she's miserable. 2 weeks. That's all it took was 2 weeks. We took her through the regimen and just kept her reapplying, and there's different stages of rebuilding that skin barrier and then, like, treating the symptoms, and she took pictures. She's like, "I cannot believe I waited a whole year, and it only took 2 weeks, and now we're sleeping," and she's smiling, and that's one. Or another person who's like, I've tried natural, and it just doesn't work," and I'm like, "Okay, well, what natural have you tried?" And it's like it's
Mhm.
a it's an extract that they've used for their poison ivy, and they're like, "Oh, wow, in 2 days, it's gone." And so the ingredients matter just as much as the process, which we see, like, why wouldn't the same concepts work? Because we see that, like, in these man-made chemicals that we've introduced into our world, like, not only are they made by the ingredients that they're those compounds that are being put together, but it's also the process by which they're made. Like, why wouldn't plants be held to that same concept?
Mhm. Exactly, and that's such an amazing story of, you know, there's just such disbelief there for some people, but like you said, when it's a truly whole plant, not just an extract, and high quality product, it makes such a difference, and I'd love to dive a little bit more into the solutions side of things here. I think We talked in our pre-chat about how it can be really overwhelming sometimes for people to hear about endocrine disruptors and learn about all of these things that are just plaguing essentially every product. And then, like we're saying, the products that they thought were green and actually aren't. And it can be really, really overwhelming. And there's a lot of noise on the internet as well with people just kind of like fear mongering to sell their own stuff, which also might not actually fit some high quality criteria. And so it's just kind of this big vicious cycle. And people just get really, really scared about these things. And on one hand, it's like, okay, as we've talked about, they're really affecting us and it's really important to pay attention to. But on the other hand, getting more stressed and more overwhelmed, also not helping our system. So, what is your advice for somebody who's like, okay, I want to do like an overhaul of my products? I want to get high quality ingredients in here. I have no idea where to start. And I'm terrified because I can't control everything.
So we have an acronym at home to kind of be our little North Star that allows us to just get to a state of presence so that we aren't so overwhelmed. And then we can just kind of continue to feel good and make good choices every day. So the acronym is shaman. And so S is for sleep, and that's adding to the sleep bank. And that's just important because when you can make that connection that rest and resilience is a part of your wellness journey, then you'll be more intentional around your sleep. So if all of a sudden you're like, I feel really crummy today, maybe take a little note like, how's my sleep looking this week? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and dedicate a night to sleep. And we'll do that here. I'll be like, all right, everyone, 8 o'clock, lights out, no devices, everyone's adding to the sleep bank. And then next day you wake up and you're like, wow, that was a nice reset. And then the H is for hydration. We are water. We are made of water. And a lot of what we're putting on our bodies and in our bodies is depleting us from that water. So, the beverages that we choose or the foods that we choose. And so, and then again, the skincare that has those drying agents in it. I like you got your water. And so it'll allow you just to make different decisions throughout the day. Like, am I going to have the potato chips or the carrots? Like, you can get hydration from food. So then you don't have to be super overwhelmed with what you're choosing. You're just like, oh, right, let me just drink some more water. And like, sometimes my daughter, I'll be like, she's like, I don't feel good today. And I'm like, how was your water intake? You're right. I haven't had water. And these are all things that help you stay in presence. And then the first A is antioxidants. And I feel like so many fads come and go when it comes to like diet and food. But if you just kind of stick to the rule of antioxidants, like it works. Like when you open up the fridge and you're like, what should I have? Oh, you know what? I'm going to have some of those blueberries. I'm going to have like, maybe I'll have some of those figs. Maybe I'm going to eat some of that arugula. Like it just forces you to like think about it from that lens. And then you're like, oh, I got some good stuff in my body. Because when you're getting the good stuff, you start to feel different. You don't stress as much. And then M is mindfulness, which brings us to that kind of stressy state of being, which is if you can practice little moments of mindfulness throughout the day, it drops your cortisol, it drops your inflammation. There's science to support it. The behavior or the Journal of Behavioral Medicine partnered with the Journal of Dermatology, and they were able to actually put a study together to show how that inflammation went down as a result of practicing mindfulness. And people think if you don't meditate for 2 hours a day, you must not get the benefits. And it's just small moments. Like if you're going to pick up your kid from school, instead of scrolling, maybe just look at the clouds, listen to the birds, like have those small mindful moments throughout the day that are incremental and then have that positive impact on your body. And then the next A is avoid. And this could be avoid the harmful ingredients, but it also could be avoiding a person or a situation. Like, but we've always had this idea like, you got to do more, commit to everything. When you start doing that, you start to get depleted. And when you create some boundaries around that, all of a sudden your energy becomes expansive. Like you remove something, it goes somewhere else. And a lot of times it's to serve you in a really positive way. And I think we are of the season to give ourselves more permission. And it's not unhealthy to avoid. It is not like you're not a high performer, or if you avoid, that doesn't make you not a high performer. And so it's just giving that permission. And then the last one is N for nature. And nature just has a wonderful way of grounding us. And especially in this world of just being inundated with all of our technology, when you take those small moments to just go outside, you just get a quick reset. So that for us has been a really helpful North Star in this world of like so much information.
I love that. That's really incredible, and I think that it breaks things down nicely into sort of like a baby steps type thing, and that's always what I say to people is if you're trying to build better habits, they have to be sustainable. They have to be enjoyable. So if you think about like you said meditation, a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions around meditation. There's very different types of meditations. It's not always that monk type meditation that you might think of. And if that just like turns you off for whatever reason, there's so many other things to focus on there. Like you said, like no devices before bedtime, really adding to the sleep bank. Like how often is that like something you do like once a week or like the sleep
The
one?
sleep bank, I mean, we talk about it almost every day.
Hmm.
But I would say when we have to make an intentional reset, I'd probably say it's every couple weeks, but
Okay.
it's like something that we'll monitor. Like last night, my daughter's getting over this really bad cold, and I was like, "Hey, hun, like add to the sleep bank. We're not gonna stay up late." And she's like, "Yep, cool, got it." And so just for her at 14 years old to be able to make that connection of being mindful of rest and resilience, and then, like, sometimes you just need a 10-minute nap, a 15-minute
Hmm.
nap, and that's okay too. Your body will thank you, and I find that, this shaman sort of North Star gets you to a place of presence, and then you're not as, like, fooled, like, you're not as overwhelmed, and then as you get to know, like, other things that are gonna serve you throughout the day, it just helps. It's like that halo effect. You just
Hmm.
keep inviting all these good things because you feel good and you wanna keep feeling good, and it's okay, like, you're gonna fall off the wagon, if you will, but it's a great way to bring yourself back on.
Hmm. I love that. And that's so amazing, like you said, I'm 14 years old that she's making those connections because, like, I wish I had something like that in college because I always had, like, almost an immediate response to a bad night's sleep in college. Like, I would immediately start to feel sick and I'd get, like, a stuffy nose or my throat would get sore, and it was always linked to a bad night's sleep, or I know like, I went to bed at 3 in the morning, like, just something absolutely absurd, but it's kinda one of those things where it's like, yeah, we all say that sleep is good for you, it's really important for your health, but if you don't make that direct connection in your own body, it's much easier to follow a healthy sleep pattern when you make those connections, and the same goes for, like, anything else, on this list, and those little moments of mindfulness is really even just at my desk, I'll feel myself clenching, and my shoulders will be all the way up here, and even it doesn't have to be a full meditation, I can just take a moment to relax. And a common theme that you've kind of been bringing up throughout this conversation is the idea of things just taking a little bit of time, like you said, with skin rebuilding the microbiome and that skin barrier can take a couple of weeks. And like you just said here, you might fall off the wagon a couple of times, but it's really just building a practice over time. Do you have any advice, I guess, for people who maybe just feel a little bit discouraged with it, just as general lifestyle practices, or specifically for their skin health? They're just like, nothing's been working, and I don't feel patient enough to be sticking with these things because we like immediate results. We live in a culture that likes immediate results. So, what's your advice there?
It's a great question because you're right. We live in a culture of wanting immediate results, and we're also used to that, right? Like we
Hmm.
can now have food at our doorstep in a matter of minutes and access information, wherever we want to go. Um, I would say there's some joy in this place of, like, nurturing your body and having some patience around it. So, we do this thing called Sanctuary Sunday where, like, we'll salve up from head to toe, and we put the Green Goo on, pick whichever one, it really doesn't matter if you want the pain relief or the dry skin or the skin repair, and you put your bathrobe on and you just have like an intentional moment, like sit outside, read a book, call a friend, um, you know, be in nature, you can do chores, but there's something really intentional about it while you're letting your skin drink up the nutrients. And then you go about your day. And sometimes it'll be the end of the day and you'll just end your day. And when you can allow yourself to be in that state, that middle state, and it's really like presence, right? Like you're just like
Mhm.
really in your body and you're giving your body what it needs. Like there's a lot of joy in there. And we don't spend enough time there to know what it feels like. So we tend to just skip it. And so I just invite going into that place because I think you'll find there's a lot of gifts and nuggets there that will not only like feed your skin in that moment, but like feed your soul throughout the day as we're dealing with all the hustle and the bustle and so forth. And obviously, like with our first aid products, like we have wound care, we got to make sure that wound gets addressed quickly. You got poison ivy, we're going to get that sting and that itch out really quickly. As it relates to the first aid component, the beauty of that is you can address your acute skin conditions without having the chemicals that's having the long-term effect. But then in addition to that, this idea that you can actually nourish your skin to get you to a place of grounding and just open up your awareness to like what is possible and how you can enjoy your day to day. Like you can be very busy and yet still be very present. And that's like the challenge I give everyone, which is like start
Mhm.
here where you do slow down a little bit. And then I challenge you to take that rest and recovery state of mind and go be busy. And like you can actually do both. You don't have
Mhm.
to be in a state of fight or flight and be productive at the same time.
I love that, and it's so crazy how, like, aligned that is with my life right now because I mean, I've always been a fairly impatient person. I know my mom will be listening to this laughing. But I have really been trying to focus on what you just said, productivity, but also incorporating rest. Like, I have just always been a very go, go, go. I don't feel productive. I'm not constantly doing something, and it gets to a point where my brain's not working and nothing's really getting done, even though I'm technically doing stuff. And I'm almost scared, I guess, of slowing down. So I'm really trying to like retrain my nervous system a little bit and force myself, I guess, to take those like slow moments of doing nothing. And having slow morning, like I love having a slow morning and where I don't just jump and open my laptop right away. And kind of, I guess, proving to myself that I can have both of those things. I can have slowness and I can also be productive and run a productive business and, so that's you said it so perfectly. It's like exactly what I'm trying to teach myself right now. Because you
It's
know it
such a
logically, but
gift.
yeah.
Yes, and, like, I always, like, people would tease me, like, "You were a bee in a past life. You're just always buzzing." And so I so relate to that, and I think also this idea that, like, burnout was, like, a badge of honor, right? And
Yeah.
so burnout is like your body's exhausted and your mind is racing, but it doesn't work. And then guess what? Inflammation shows up, whether it's insomnia, cloudy brain, all those things. And so it's so interesting to flip that and be like, oh, wow, I am like just as productive, but like I'm like in a state of rest and recovery. My body is like not wasting energy on other things. It's like back to that avoid and then
Mhm,
it's creating energy for other
mhm.
things. And so I'm like way more creative, way more productive, less reactive, and my body is too. And so it's a cool exercise to just kind of practice. And it is that same thing. It doesn't happen overnight. I know sometimes I remember when people would talk about this and I'm like, I want that, but I don't know how to get there.
Mhm.
And it's like you can't swallow the elephant whole. And that's where that shaman just like really worked for us at home because it's those small bites. And I had a great mentor who had me, like, set my alarm every 3 hours, and I had to do a presence exercise, like, focus on one of your 5 senses for 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and that was your mindful moment, and you do that every 3 hours, you stop what you're doing, and what it does is it, like, it builds that muscle, that presence muscle, so that you can then take it into being busy and doing it at the
Yeah.
same time, but you just kinda have to, like, gotta work your way into the Jedi.
Yeah. Yes, I love that, and it's so true, and even, you do it f for long enough with the alarm, you'll notice that you just start to do it more often unprompted,
Mhm.
until, like you said, it's just really it's a flow state that you get into. So yeah, that's really amazing. So we are coming up on the end here, but I'd love to ask about, obviously we've got Green Goo and all of that information will be in the show notes for everybody. But I'd love to know your like can't live without ingredients for skincare, and if there's any other brands, I guess, that you want to shout out that you really love or use.
Yes. Well, my favorite ingredient, ooh, that's tough. I mean, I love calendula. Calendula for wound care. I love rose hips for, like, skincare, sort of like antioxidant
Mhm.
nutrition. Um And actually, I really love chamomile for skin too because it does calm the nervous system. It's, of course, an ingredient in our eczema, and not knowing, when we put this formula together, it's fun not knowing what we didn't, or what we know today, I guess better stated, is really fun because of how it calms the nervous system and, like, really that feedback loop in
Mhm.
terms of, you gotta calm the nervous system in order to start addressing the inflammation. And then, like, from a brand's standpoint, like, and I guess more ingredients is I take holy basil every day. I think it's a
Okay.
wonderful one that's underappreciated. Of course, we hear a lot about ashwagandha, which I love. But holy basil is one that I would be more inclined to say I can't live without. It's an amazing adaptogen and has nutritional value, so that's a good one. Um Let's see, and aloe vera, that's another one that, like, there's a reason why it's so good internally and of course externally, and we talked about
Mhm.
slippery elm, actually, before we
Yeah.
went on, and slippery
Yes.
elm, I take that every day, and I think that's also a wonderful one. It's like feeding your skin on the inside.
That's awesome, and I love how you brought up holy basil because I not enough people know about that one, and as somebody who, like, struggles with anxiety, that one will put like, if I have insomnia, it'll put me to sleep. Holy basil is, like, some other level. If it feels like I took, like, 3 melatonin, except, I wake up and I feel like I rested and not groggy. But yeah, holy basil is also, and it's there's another name for it, isn't there?
Tulsi,
Tulsi, that's
tul
it,
yeah,
yes. Yeah, I love my Tulsi tea.
yeah, it's good stuff.
Yes, it really is. Thank you so much for being here today. I have one last question that I'd like to ask all of my guests at the end of our interviews. If you could rewrite the health class curriculum that every woman deserves, what would your first lesson be?
Rewrite the health curriculum that every woman deserves. Well, I'll add this. So I went to the Buck Institute in California, and I listened to a presentation on women's health. And they talked about the ovaries being the Wi-Fi and why women are so and you asked this question earlier, and so a little more around this. Women are disproportionately included in research studies. So all of these medications and all of these things that are out there, there may be a handful of women that were in that study. And because of our ovaries, because of our hormones, we do respond differently. Hence why these endocrine disruptors are having such a profound impact on our well-being and longevity. And so I would love to rewrite leaning in more there and how we respond to our environment and our longevity and our wellness, as a health curriculum class, that we just don't spend, like, our ovaries have always been about reproduction instead of longevity and wellness, and I would
Mhm.
love to have more information around that. I think it could be really, really powerful.
That's amazing. I love that because you're so right. We always are talking about it in terms of reproduction. And a lot of times when you do have women involved in studies, they're linking it back to fertility. And fertility is really important, like you said, for longevity. Healthy ovulation is important for our overall optimal health and longevity. It's not just about making babies. And so that's so, so important, and I love the ovaries of the Wi-Fi. That's really interesting analogy, but it's so true. And like you said, our the female hormone system is just 10 times more complex than a man's hormone system. And so we talk about like declining sperm count, which is definitely, driven by a lot of these endocrine disruptors in our lifestyle. But for women, it's causing direct pain for a lot of us and symptoms that are interfering with our lives in a disproportionate way. And a lot of that does come back to our ovaries and the health of our ovaries. So I think that would be a really phenomenal class. Well, thank you so much, Jodi. This was a really incredible conversation. Where can people find you?
Yeah, greengoo.com and Jodi A. Scott at LinkedIn. Come over and say
Awesome.
hi.
Great. I will make sure that is linked for everybody in the show notes. Thank you guys all for listening. Make sure to share this episode with somebody that you think would enjoy it. And class dismissed.